Hello everyone and welcome back to a Legionary's life where we're done training and it's ready to get going. We build up some of the skills for our character, mainly the sword and javelin skills, but also some of the other stats. What I'm going to do here though is okay, the tutorial is on, that's good. Yeah, let's get going and start with our first battle. The camp bursts into activity as the whole army prepares to leave. You march to the south. It doesn't take long for your destination to become apparent. You're bound for New Carthage, the capital of the Carthaginian colonies here in Hispania. It's a daring move, and very risky. Several days later, you reach your destination and set camp not far from the city. According to Camp Talk, the closest enemy army is about 10 days' march from here. A long siege is out of the question. You'll have to take New Carthage by storm. You cast a glance at the city walls, strong stone walls. The thought of fighting your way up there makes your stomach churn. It's hard not to think that you may be looking at the place where your days will end. Right, we're in some pre-battle screen here. Let's just continue. The next morning, your manipul is among the first to move out of the camp and reach the plain right in front of the city. If what your centurion said is true, the garrison of New Carthage consists of a small mercenary army, possibly 1,000 strong, and of course the city militia. You're taking your place on the battlefield when all of a sudden, cries of alarm rise from the ranks. You look ahead with a start. The city gate is wide open. A screaming mass, numbering thousands, leaves the safety of the walls, quickly closing the gap with your partially deployed first line. Judging by their scant equipment, they must be the militia. The enemy commander wouldn't risk his precious mercenaries like this. Blood pounding in your ears, you get ready to receive them as the first battle of your life engulfs you. When the other side is at the right distance, you prepare to hurl your first javelin. And we can just throw it into the enemy ranks or pick off a specific target. And, yeah, just because I don't think we're that great with the javelin just about yet. I think picking off a specific target, that might just be too much for us for now. Let's just throw it into the enemy ranks. We decide to play it safe and hurl the javelin in the general direction of the hostile troops. We pass the throwing check. It's a very easy check to pass this one, with no apparent benefits except for passing the check. Whether the throwing it at a specific target is a much harder check, but with actual positive benefits if you pass, but also with negative side effects if you fail. And I think we would be pretty likely to fail that, so that's why I did this one. Your javelin disappears into the ranks of the foe. You can't say what damage it caused, if at all, but it must have produced some confusion at least. As the other side gets closer and closer, you steel yourself for the incoming fight. Is there any tutorial? There is no combat tutorial. Or is there? There is not. That is unfortunate. Okay, I guess it does show some. Right, I guess I'll just have to go over this. So, fighting is done in rounds, and during each round, each side gets to have their turn of doing things. You could have multiple turns if you're lucky in one round. So, for example, if you're very lucky, you get 2 or maybe even 3 turns to do something in one round, whereas the enemy might get 1. And it also works the other way, so the enemy also might be able to get more actions than you do during one particular round. So that might be very beneficial or very bad for you, regardless. Before those rounds start, though, we can once again throw our javelin. I'm actually going to put that sound a bit lower again. Just for now, during the explanation. So, before we actually get into the rounds, we can once again throw our javelin. What you can see here are the H and the U. What does it mean? We have this hand here showing a thumbs up. If the thumb is all the way up, like in a 100% vertical stance, let's just say it like that, then you have a 100% chance of succeeding in your attack. It's basically just your hit chance. The chance to wound the opponent, your hit chance. If the thumb is all the way down, so 100% vertically down, there's a 0% chance to actually hit with my throw. If the thumb is kind of in the middle, so perfectly horizontal, the game says it's about a 50-50 chance of hitting. That's at least what the game says. Then it's about 50-50. So if it's in a 45-degree angle compared to horizontal, basically up, that would constitute a 75% chance to hit. And if it's about 45% downwards from the horizontal stance, it would be about 25% chance to hit. The same rule with the thumb applies for the U, but the U is the chance to render the opponent's defensive item, in this case the shield when I'm throwing the javelin, unusable. Which is in this case a pretty low chance. The shield has a certain defensive value, which I will talk about in a bit, that will block some of the damage done by my javelin. So there's there's about a 25% chance that if I hit with my javelin, it will bypass the defense of the javelin and just deal the damage it would do. I can increase these odds by having a different kind of attitude. Just like with training, if I have a more aggressive stance, you can already see that these sliders are going up. So the thumbs are going up, at least the hit thumb is now more towards 50%, whereas if I'm in the neutral attitude, I'm doing slightly worse. Now if I'm in defensive stance, then my chance to hit are lower. Now, does it actually show? Yeah, here. An aggressive attitude makes your attacks more likely to succeed, but your defense becomes less effective. The opposite is true for a defensive attitude. If you're being too defensive, your morale may drop. Being too defensive will make your morale drop eventually, but your defense increases. It's harder for the enemy to hit you when you're in the back, just like our chance to hit decreases when we are defensive. The chance for the enemy to hit you will also decrease, and I believe that your chance to negate some of the damage also increases, but I'm not 100% sure on that, but at least you'll have better defense. That's what attitude does. What we see here are our defensive and offensive equipment, just our equipment in general here, and our shield, our sword, etc., etc. Now, as for these three bars, we have the health, the top left, which is red. It's reduced whenever a character is wounded. When the circle disappears, the character dies. The actual maximum health value, the whole circle, depends on the character's constitution, as we've seen before. Constitution means health. Our stance, which is the top right blue circle, represents a character's balance and readiness, basically the stability of how we stand in the fight. The further it falls below 100, the whole circle, the more open and vulnerable a fighter becomes. However, it can be regained very quickly and frequently through the recover action. So basically while we are fighting, how is our stance? Are we defending ourselves properly with the shield? Do we have the sword at the ready? Things like that. That's all stance. And depending on your stance, it will become harder to hit the enemy, easier to be hit. So if I have a low stance, the enemy has a higher chance to hit me, and I have a lower chance to hit the enemy. That's basically what this does. So making sure that the opponent has a very low stance will help you in being able to deal damage ultimately, because you will be able to hit the enemy much easier if they have very low stance. And then there's the last one, which is fatigue. And fatigue, the bottom green bar, which has no greenery just about yet, penalizes a character's performance. So let's go back. Although the amount necessary for this to happen depends on endurance. The circle represents how close a character is to the next level of fatigue. You have 3 levels of fatigue in this game. We're at 0, so we have no performance penalty. Once the bar is entirely green, it will empty again and will raise 1 fatigue level. Once you are fatigued, and it might actually also show in here, maybe fatigue. Yeah, fatigue represents the current tiredness of a fighter. How much fatigue a character can accumulate before being penalized depends on your endurance. Usually it's fully recovered after combat. It is also reduced by a large amount, still based on the character's endurance, in between combat rotations, and by a tiny amount through the respite action. I haven't really been able to see how much fatigue affects your performance, but I'm quite sure it affects hit chance and a chance to be hit. And we can see that the opponent does not wear any armor on the torso, on the head, and on the legs, but they do have a shield. Either way, I'm going to increase my attitude to very offensive, because it increases my chances of hurling or hitting with a javelin. So if it's a success, it's health damage. With a failure, my attacker stance, so me, reduced by 10 to 20 if a quick check or quickness check against the opponent fails. So if we miss with this throw, which is 50%, our stance will be reduced by 10 to 20 if we fail the quick chance. The quick check. Now, we increase our fatigue by 3. We don't increase our fatigue level by 3, but the green circle will increase a little bit. I don't know whether it's 3 out of 100 for it to raise the fatigue level. But 3 is relatively little. So let's hurl that javelin. And we actually hit him right in the torso. We got really lucky. It was a bullseye hit. Okay, here we go. There is the tutorial. Nice, nice. So let's actually do this as well. You can hover your mouse over any element of the combat UI to view its tooltip. For example, each selectable action contains a tooltip explaining what it does. Further details inside the in-game manual. You can also press Ctrl to show the available hotkeys. Yes. Every time it's your turn to act, you can choose among several actions. Each action, aside from those that open a submenu, has 1 or more indicators. The first one usually represents your chance to hit, as we've seen, the H. The second indicator may have different meanings depending on the action. For each indicator, the chance of success is represented by a hand with a thumb icon. Icon that's fully up corresponds to a 100% chance. Similarly, fully down icon is a 0% chance. In between these extremes, different inclinations of the icon represent different possibilities. For example, when the icon points fully to the right, the chance is 50%. This is 65, not 75 like I said, although the angle is different. This is 20%. And so on. In the heat of combat, these icons represent your Legionary's level of confidence about his next move. The chance of success used for the actual roll is converted into an angle and used to rotate the icon. Always keep an eye on your stance. When it's not full, you're more open to attack and your own strikes are more easily averted. Like I said, you also become slower to act. So that means that you also get less turns. You're likely to get less turns per round than your opponent. The lower the stance, the worse it gets. This is true for the enemy too. Any rule that applies to you also applies to your opponents. Stance can be quickly regained through the recover action, which you can't see down there. The success rate depends on your coordination. Fatigue will slowly build up depending on your actions and endurance. When the circle is full, your fatigue will increase 1 level. There are 3 levels, exhausted being the worst. If you become exhausted before your enemy, you will be in trouble. In pitched battles, you are rotated regularly, and fatigue is a minor concern. There are a number of situations where it's more relevant though. For example, when facing an opponent in single combat, or if you are a centurion and must hold the line for longer than the troop. The attitude bars of extreme tactical importance. Defensive attitude sacrifices offense for defense, and aggressive attitude does the opposite, increasing your chance to hit and making you more vulnerable at the same time. If you frequently maintain a defensive attitude, you might slowly lose morale. Sometimes this is a cheap price to pay to live and fight another day. You can change your attitude as often as you like with no cost. You can click on any character on the combat UI for a detailed screen showing their values and currently active effects. When an effect is present, you can click on it for further details. Right. So now we're here in round 1. We already hit our first militiaman. Very nice. We're at a very aggressive stance. So out of these, attack is just a regular attack on the enemy, either on the torso, which of course is affected by the, well, the torso equipment, such as this, I believe this is a linen cuirass or something. Then the arm, which is also on the torso, or at least the that particular item protects it. Then we have the head, which is protected by the shield. The leg, which is protected by greaves, at least, or the equipment which is put on the legs. The groin, which is also the torso region, or at least the same equipment that protects it. And then we have the neck, which is, well, I believe the neck is protected by the head equipment, because you have maybe some equipment for the torso as well, not 100% sure. Either way, we have pretty good chances to hit here. Definitely not bad, but that's the regular attack. A feint will reduce the opponent's stance. We can do a quick feint with success reduces the enemy stance by 14 to 28. If we fail, there's no consequence, and there's a fatigue cost. The H is the chance of success, and the C in this case is the chance to overcome the opponent's resistance. Your opponent has the ability to resist your feint, and the check is based on an awareness and quickness check. If the opponents resist it, only 20% of the stance loss is applied. So instead of losing 20, if we were to have that, they only lose 4. So that's quite a difference. Then we have the normal one, which reduces it by a lot more, but has a lower chance to actually hit. And then there's a deft feint, which reduces the opponent's stance by significantly more, but again has a much lower chance to hit. You can see that the chance to hit is lower because the thumb is lower, with the quick feint being the easiest. That's what feint does. Shield is pretty much the same as feint, but more high risk. We can knock the enemy with our shield, reducing his stance by 64 to 80. But if we fail, our stance is reduced by a lot as well. In this case, the chance to overcome the opponent's resistance is a strength-based check instead of a quickness and awareness-based check in the feint department. So if we have a very high strength and not such a high awareness and this one is even awareness and quickness, and this one is only awareness. I didn't even see that. But if our awareness is very low and our strength is very high, we would be more inclined to do a shield charge or shield knock, because the check to overcome the enemy's resistance is much higher. The charge is even more high risk than the knock, reducing the opponent's stance by 80 to 100. But our stance is reduced by 30 to 60 when failing. And you can see that the penalty for getting resistance is also higher. If the action is resisted, only 15% of the stance loss is applied, compared to the 20 when we were dealing with the non-shield ones. And the attacker will suffer 30% of the chance loss applied in case of a failure, instead of having no penalty at all. That's the shield. Then we have respite. And respite reduces fatigue by 1, and this is the fatigue. And then we have soft spot. The soft spot is pretty much the same as a regular attack. However, it has the chance to bypass the enemy's defense for a lower hit chance. So the chance to hit is lower, but you have a higher chance to bypass the enemy's defense. That's basically the soft spot one. So making sure that the enemy has a very low stance might help you in getting to a soft spot, the ability to attack a soft spot if the enemy has very high armor. Because if he has very high armor, just attacking him with the sword while he's wearing a chainmail might not actually cause that much damage. So you need to reduce his stance and make sure that you can hit him in a soft spot on his whatever torso, so you can actually bypass the defensive values of the chainmail and hit him where it hurts. That's not the case for the militiaman, because the militiaman does not have that much armor. So soft spot doesn't become as useful at that point. Against this guy, because he's wearing neither a helmet nor just actual armor, we can see here that I can go for damage modifier of 1. You can see here health damage times 1, and this is damage times 0.5. There's all these different ones. Depending on where the enemy has armor, you might want to strike them there. Attack on the torso is the highest, is the easiest. Head is slightly harder, but still pretty decent chance. And yeah, our offensive values also are in consideration here. I'm not gonna worry with this guy about his stance, because we can hit him pretty easily, or at least the odds of hitting him are relatively high. I'm just gonna go straight for the kill, trying to hit him in the head. And we missed. That's great. We both missed. So if we were to attack now, it's only a 50% chance of hitting. Why? Because our stance reduced significantly. I can try to do recover, which was 50% chance. Luckily, I got a second turn. Because the enemy did not attack me during my previous turn this round, my recover is now 100%, which is great. Alright, so he recovered as well, unfortunately. Let's try that again. Now, we actually reduce our stance by 15 to 35 here, and the same as here. I'm surprised, actually, that I have a lower chance to hit now. Let's just go for torso hit. Wow, we're getting pretty unlucky already. And he's getting double attack. Lovely. So, you can get pretty unlucky with that stuff. Luckily, he hit me right where it didn't matter that much. Alright, he failed that. So, let's recover again. Let's try that. Good, we're at full. And he as well. Can we just get lucky here? Only 7, huh? Alright, let's try to hit him in the head. And another 7. He has a lot of hit points here. Let's go... The charge has a pretty high chance of succeeding. But let's just go for a feint here. The problem is, if we faint and he just rests, it doesn't do a whole lot for us. Let's try that again. I really want to finish off this militiaman. Let's hit him in the head once more. Come on. We missed. Come on. As you can see, it's very, very random. And yeah, if you're just generally unlucky, even though I was very likely to kill him, if you just keep missing a couple of times like this, eventually it still sucks and you didn't accomplish anything. Eventually the enemy formation starts breaking apart. Very soon panic spreads as their wavering turns into a rout. We did seriously wound him though, so that's okay. And we didn't get hurt ourselves, so. The Carthaginian militia is in disarray. An improvised pursuit is attempted, but your vanguard is stopped at the city gate before it can break in. Okay, well, let's continue. We failed the defense, weapon, strength, and con. Check. The Centurion beckons to some of your comrades. After a brief talk, they move away from the maniple. You wonder what's going on. The rest of you will storm the city walls. Many ladders are being propped up against the walls, while a constant shower of missiles is raining down from the battlements. The Centurion promised to share a generous portion of his reward should he manage to be the first man over the walls. Let's do our best to help the Centurion. You are one of the first to spring forward, determined to open the way. We pass our quickness check, and you are climbing as quickly as you can. The defenders should have a hard time taking aim at you, but your bold action is still leaving you quite exposed. We miss our defensive check. One of the missiles hits you. Our health is decreased by 22. You're way too vulnerable here. You're hit again. Your health has decreased by 8. The defender's resistance gets more and more reckless with despair. There's no way to reach the top. At least the Centurion has noticed your intrepid effort. Your opinion, Centurion, has increased by 5. The cacophony is unbearable. Cries from both enemies and allies blend with the thuds of stones and smaller projectiles bouncing all around you. Suddenly the noise begins to dwindle and fade. You can believe what you're seeing. Hundreds of Roman legionaries are running along the top of the wall, coming from the north. How did they get there? Anyhow, the Punics are melting before them, leaving the battlements unguarded. In the end, your allies reach the gate and open it, letting in the bulk of your legions. Now, my HP is extremely low. We took 30 damage in trying to get on the wall. That might not have been such a great idea. You follow your maniple into the city streets. Your orders are very clear. Secure the city by killing everything that meets you in the open. Hopefully nobody will be so ill-considered. Your thoughts are interrupted when a small number of militiamen stand in your path. Okay, it's another militiaman. He attacks and missed the torso. Let's get a aggressive attitude. And let's try a deft feint. And we succeeded. So he's now at 44. His stance is decreased by 44. We can probably go for a normal feint here. And he failed in his recovery, which is really good, because that means that I can go for a neck blow, which deals pretty much double damage if we hit. The head is much safer though, with a much higher chance to hit. So let's go for the head. And unfortunately he did recover. Let's go for a regular feint. And let's try to hit him in the head again. Oh, come on. This is what I mean. Like, at some point it's gonna go quite sour. We probably could have killed him already if we were actually lucky, but we weren't. Let's just recover now that we have these allies against this poor militiaman. These guys are useless. Let's hit him with a normal feint. And my buddies have to recover or waste even more time. Let's hit him in the head. Good. Please let me kill him. Ah, that's unfortunate. At least he's dead. You look at the militiaman's lifeless body. quick thoughts flickering through your mind. Either elation or pity. Let's choose pity. Drafted into service, forced to fight to defend his home, it does ring a bell. You wonder about the people waiting for him at home, never to see him come back. Your virtue has increased by 2. An officer yelling out orders brings you back down to earth with a bump. You move on. You keep marching along the streets as is custom. Looting is strictly prohibited until the battle is over. Let's stick to the rules and go ahead to the rallying point. New Carthage is almost conquered, but 500 mercenaries from the garrison are still holding the citadel. The proconsul is looking for volunteers for an assault on this last bastion. He's throwing in a more than doubled loot share. These mercenaries are nothing like the militia you have been facing until now. They may not be the enemy's best troops. They wouldn't have been left here if they were, but they are still professional soldiers. Only the most experienced legionaries are volunteering. No one would blame you if you backed off. If I had full health, I definitely would have done this, but this is actually the first time that I played this 2 times before. Like I said, I've never taken a 30 HP hit, and I don't think that we will be able to survive such an ordeal off of 18 health. No matter how much I would want that. So I'm going to back off here. After a brief but intense struggle, the garrison surrenders. Yeah, that's probably for the best. New Carthage has fallen. For the first time in so many years, a change in the tides of war appears within grasp. Your morale's increased by 8. You receive your share of the loot, 80 denarii. Your army has obtained an important base of operations. The city's resources will be invaluable for the rest of the campaign. Fighting in a real battle has sharpened your skills. Sword skill, shield skill, and javelin skill increased by 3. Not bad. So we're back here at this starting or this intermediate screen, and we can do training, etc. once again like we did before. We now have 133 cash. So I think we can buy a bit better sword. Yeah, we're still hurt. That chainmail looks very expensive, but I think we can probably get a better sword here. Much better than we had before. Damage 3 to 16 instead of 1 to 12. Anti-armor is a lot higher, which means that we have a higher chance of bypassing the enemy's armor and dealing more damage. Higher handiness, which gets into consideration with some of the checks. Yeah, that's great. Let's buy that and equip it, and then also sell this other sword that we had. We don't have that much money anymore. I was hoping to see some greaves, but we don't. Let's take a look at our character, because now it's 37 sword and 35 javelin. I think we can still do some solo practice and javelin practice. Let's also do some leisure time, playing some games, etc. Let's try to do a few workouts while the thread of our life is spun. A slave bumps into you and falls, dropping his load. We can kick him for his clumsiness, make sure he's alright, or ignore the incident. I'm pretty sure this has to do with morale. Let's just make sure he's alright. He apologizes to you as you help him get on his feet. Your kindness seemed to catch him off guard. Your virtue has increased by 3. He leaves after apologizing once more. Later the same day you realize you're missing some money. Slave indeed. He must have been a thief who somehow crept into the camp. You curse your naivety, but there's something else you can do. Nothing else you can do. You surely won't find him in the camp anymore. You've lost 26 denarii. Okay. Again, the thread of my life is spun. You're having a chat with Gavius, a Samnite auxiliary of the Pentry tribe. An intelligence check, and we passed. His people and yours used to be sworn enemies, with the last war ending not even a century ago. Now they are trusted allies. Gavius has been telling you about his home, so close to where the war against Hannibal is at its worst. You can't help thinking of your home. You're homesick or imperturbable. Let's feel homesick. There's nothing wrong with feeling homesickness after spending such a long time abroad, living through so many days that could have been your last. Morale's increased by 1. Okay. Let's do some extra guard duty, extra patrol. Just trying to get these opinions a bit higher, which, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And let's also do some sparring. Morale's decreased by 3. Like I said, if you train too much, that's what will happen. Sure, let's also do an extra patrol here for now. So the troops already like me quite a bit. Deeds, we shared, shared militiamen and wounded militiamen. Not too much yet. I can try doing solo practice and javelin practice once more, but I don't think we can do it that often. Not getting too lucky here with those leisure activities. That's for sure. Great. Let's play dice again. Awareness check. You suddenly wake up. It's night and you're inside your quarters. It takes you a few seconds to become aware of the situation. There's a shadow moving slowly close to you, carefully going through your belongings. A thief. We can try to catch him ourselves or call for help. I don't know how high my speed check is. Let's call for help. The thief is taken by surprise and your comrades react quickly to your voice. 2 of them block the only way out and the rest of you have an easy time pinning the intruder down. His face looks vaguely familiar, a soldier from another maniple. You recover your money and hand him over to the guards. Morale increased by 2. Okay. Let's do some extra guard duty. Opinion troop has increased. How's our morale? Very high. Let's also do an extra patrol. And let's try to do some workouts. Great. Let's move on then. It's over a year since the capture of New Carthage. The Carthaginians have failed to respond properly, hindered by rivalries and lack of cooperation amongst their generals. After winter came and went, Proconsul Scipio sent you on the move once again, marching against the closest enemy army. Led by Hasdrubal Barca, one of Hannibal's brothers, the Carthaginians are holding a high 2-step plateau near the town of Baecula, a fine defensive position indeed. Dislodging them from there looks like a rather hopeless task, but the proconsul must know what is clear to everyone. The longer you'll stay here waiting, the higher the risk that the remaining 2 enemy armies will come and crush you. And that's where we end the episode. I want to thank you all for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. And we'll continue in the next one. So like I said, thanks for watching. See you all next time. Bye-bye.